from somewhere in the U.S. And we essentially provided whatever anybody needed in that area. This is probably the end of the first week after Helene. So just after this, I met some guys that were actually fellow veterans. I'm a veteran myself. They were working with the Special Forces Charitable Trust and the Special Forces Association. And their mission is to take care of Special Forces members and their families. But during this disaster, they decided to help out everybody that they could. And after meeting them, I got connected with a couple different organizations. Operation Airdrop is one of them. They needed people to walk in on foot, or horseback, or a bike, or a rappel, or whatever, to get into some of the hardest hit areas and figure out what people needed. Because people were stranded, they didn't have water, they didn't have food, medical supplies, you name it, they just didn't have it. So, me and another veteran that I met from Rutherford, we had never known each other before, Helene. We started teaming up. We'd drive as far as we could go, and then we'd get out and we'd walk. And some days we did 2 miles, some days we did 12. And we get into these small areas, that are affected between Bat Cave and Fairview, Black Mountain. We'd find, even in the Shumont, we'd find people, homesteads that were stranded, destroyed. We would find and mark a area roughly 150 foot in diameter, make sure there was no trees or debris that could get sucked into rotor wash on a helicopter. Then we would give those coordinates to our friends with the Special Forces Charitable Trust and some of the organizations sometimes, like Operation Airdrop. And then they would bring in by helicopter the stuff that the people needed at that homestead or that community. So all that happened in the first 2 weeks, and then from there, we transitioned into Bat Cave. And at Bat Cave, I basically fell into an operation that had already started, in a sense. And you can go ahead and continue the video. Thank you.
That's still Tim Edwin, right?
That's still Tim Edward, too. Early on, some of the necessities that were needed, everyone was, who didn't have electricity was burning propane, was burning wood, but mostly propane, natural gas. And a lot of these folks who were using that to heat their homes, they had never used gas to heat their home. And they didn't know the risk that having gas, especially inside your home, such as with like a buddy heater or the small portable heaters, how dangerous it was. And people were dying from exposure to gas. And so we had a huge need for CO2 detectors and fire extinguishers, which we started just asking for donations. And somehow, some way, we were able to provide about $9,000 or $10,000 worth of CO2 detectors and fire extinguishers to various communities. So I know to do things like this without having resources ourselves. And what I mean is that, we're probably especially through late October, November, all of December, most of January, we were probably averaging about $500,000 to $750,000 a week in free work for folks. And we did this on a shoestring budget. I think to date, we've probably been donated around $21,000 since Helene. So we've done this by network. Essentially, we've asked people who have called and offered to help, either through us or through a third party. And we've been able to figure out logistically how to get their equipment here and for them to help us reconstruct somebody's property, demolish their house. The debris fields like the one you saw there, it took us about 26 or 27 days to clear. We were burning 45 to 50 tons a day, burning. And it would probably take us about 3 days to clear 20 square foot. I mean, it's very dangerous, and it was for the most part impossible, you know. So we didn't think about how long it would take us, just the light at the end, because the folks that lived there had no other alternative. So it's really amazing that we've been able to do this long. I believe that it takes a special breed of person, if you will, to be able to be selfless enough to almost overly selfless, to offer everything they have each day to be able to benefit somebody else. Able to rehome, I believe, 15 different families, RVs, donated RVs. We just finished a project recently in Chimney Rock where a lady named Valerie and her son, his wife, and their 2 kids were present during Helene. A landslide pretty much demolished their home. They were in it when it happened. I mean, the way they survived that, if you would have seen the house before we demolished it, you wouldn't have been able to fathom how they would have. But we spent about 2 weeks clearing that property. And it was a lot smaller. It was probably 400 to 600 cubic yards of debris, trees, rocks. And we just recently were able to get them an RV, clear, level their lot, grade it. It doesn't look anything like it did when they first bought the property, but it's a blank page for them to be able to start over. But I don't think that a lot of the photos and videos should be seen in a way because of how traumatic it was to those families. But I believe that what we're doing is really good. And to be honest, a disaster like this, it attracts some of the best people and some of the worst. So you hear about great, wonderful stories, people being saved, rescued, rehabilitated by a volunteer group or a nonprofit, but you also hear stories of people being, used, robbed. There's a lot of negative in between all the positive as well. So it's it's a disaster, and to be honest with you, the emergency units around here, the network that they had was never going to be sufficient for a disaster like this. Even the federal government, you know, everyone complained about FEMA, but they had no way to respond to something like this, an area that our own emergency management itself could not, in that scale, be effective. So, but at the end of the day, you know, we're still doing work up there. Everything still looks the same way it did after Helene for the most part, in the hardest hit areas. Bat Cave, Chimney Rock, there's been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of repairs done. There's been a lot of work done. But all in all, it's been completely changed. The way it looked before Helene, it'll never look that way again. But what's most important is that we were able to at least give these people that lost everything or lost something, we were able to give them something back without them having to pay for it. And it's really restored my faith in humanity as a whole. I mean, we've had volunteers from Alaska who have come and stayed for 2 months. Hawaii, California, Canada, everywhere. It's just some of the greatest people that you'll ever meet. And nothing that is a talking point and that you would see on the media is anything that would bother or be a topic of conversation in this group of volunteers. Doesn't matter what their politics are. It doesn't matter what they believe in. None of that matters. We are literally as close as you can be, you know, as friends. And it's amazing that a group of people that are complete strangers can come together to help another community out. So it's a very positive, reinforcing American values, taking care of each other in these small communities. But yeah, I'd like to answer any questions if anybody has any questions.